Good morning, students. Today's session will be to prepare you for the next year's exams and assignments. So the things that we'll be covering will help you understand the concepts a little bit better. So for the first thing, what are the differences between transitive and intransitive verbs? Now, we have determined between transitive and intransitive, and that would be when, for transitive, it would be when someone does something to an object. This means the sentence must have an object. And there's a clear example. Bobby finished his homework. In this sentence, Bobby, the subject, did something to his homework. He finished it. The homework is the object, Bobby is the subject. Homework is thus the direct object in the sentence. For intransitive, the verb does not require a direct object. For example, Sandra will sleep until noon, and the verb sleep has no object. Verbs of motion are further examples of intransitive verbs. For example, she ran or we drove. Prepositional phrases. It is a group of related words having neither subject nor predicate and is equivalent to a single part of a speech. A phrase that consists of a preposition and its object with modifiers is called a prepositional phrase. A prepositional phrase can be an adjective. For example, she is a wealthy person. She is a person of wealth. So, meaning wealthy person, that's the prepositional phrase. It's very important to focus on this as a definition, because you might be asked to define what prepositional phrases are, and then at times you could be asked to give examples to show in a sentence the prepositional phrase. So go and look for more examples. Then, again, types of sentences. You need to be clear on the fact that there's 4 different types of sentences. You have the declarative, the interrogative, the imperative, and the exclamatory sentence. And then also to know the definition for each one and giving examples. For the declarative sentence, it's something that tells you, it declares something. Declarative, declare. They end with periods and the subject usually comes first. James is singing. You declare the fact that he's doing something. Interrogative, it's like you're being asked something, you're under question. So these usually have question marks, and either the whole predicate or part of the predicate usually comes first. For example, is James singing? For the imperative, imperative do not give information, but it expresses a command. Open your textbook. Do this, go close the windows, see to it that you are doing something. That's imperative. And for exclamatory, that means you are exclaiming something, you are putting emphasis on something. So usually those sentences will have an exclamation mark at the end. For example, stop that thief. So you're putting exclamation, you're excited to share that statement. So those are the 4 types of sentences. Then passive and active voice. You need to know clearly the differences when a sentence is written passively or actively. For active voice, the subject is doing the action. A straightforward example in the sentence, Steve loves Amy. Steve is the subject and he is doing the action. He loves Amy, the object of the sentence. So it's as it's happening because it's active, it's happening now. Passive voice, the target of the action gets promoted to the subject position. Steve loves Amy, I would say. Amy is loved by Steve. That's when you are retelling something that has happened. It's not happening right now, it's in the past. The subject of the sentence becomes Amy, but she isn't doing anything. Rather, she is just the recipient of Steve's love. The focus of the sentence has changed from Steve to Amy. So When you have to maybe define between active and passive voice, make sure that you know the differences, and you'll need to have to know a lot of examples. Or maybe focus on the fact that you might have to turn active sentences into passive voice, or passive voice sentences into active voice. So that could be asked as well within an exam or an assignment. Then the random input method. The random input method is a lateral thinking tool. It is useful for generating fresh ideas or new perspectives during problem solving. What are the benefits of using the random input method within your class? It offers new perspectives on a problem. It fosters creative leaps and permits escape from restrictive thinking patterns. We want students to be open. We want them to be thinking creatively on their own, and that should then determine the lesson. So that's the benefit of using a random input method. How could one do that within your class? You select a random noun, whether from a prepared set from the dictionary or from one's own list of 60 words. It's helpful to get new insight by selecting a word from outside the field being studied. List the word's attributions or associations, then apply each to the problem at hand. With persistence, at least one of these may create a creative leap. So, for example, and this is a really good example, when Campbell's Soup was brainstorming new ideas for soup products, they used the random word tool. Campbell's was looking for a new kind of soup or an expansion to their current product line. They used the random word tool and started with the word apartment. That's got nothing to do with soup. It's just a word, it's random, it doesn't make sense. They brainstormed around the word, no logic, they just let the ideas flow. Apartment led to building. Build, tools, hammer, saw, drill, knife, which eventually led to fork. Someone on the team said, you can't eat soup with a fork. It would have to be in chunks to do that. So the chunky soup was born. And that's how creativity then plays a role when you use the random input method. It's also good using novels to teach adverbs when you're teaching English in the class. And how could one do that? How is it useful? After you've read and discussed the story, do the following with your novels. You choose 10 sentences from the story, or make up your own sentences about the story. In these sentences, use verbs. For example, walk, ran, cried, sing, will, come, talk, but do not add any adverbs. Write the 10 sentences on sentence strips. Divide the class into 10 groups. Each group receives one sentence strip. Each group has to write down 10 words describing the verb. That then becomes adverbs. Each member of the group gets the opportunity to read out their sentence with one of their adverbs included. You can do this as a class competition where each learner who gives a correct sentence receives a point for the team, and each learner who uses the adverbs in the same sentence receives 2 points. So that could be very helpful to build some competition and excitement within the class using the novels you are reading as well. The rules that we need to keep in mind when we set up multiple choice questions. It's good to set up multiple choice questions because you have to, when you do set up tests or exams, you need to think, you kind of have to order it in Bloom's taxonomy. Now, and you have to have specific levels. Now, taking in mind only with multiple choice, these are the following rules you need to adhere to. You test comprehension and critical thinking. You are not just testing recalling. You use simple sentence structures and precise wording. You have to place most of the words in the question stem. Make all distractors plausible. Avoid double negatives. Mix up the order of the correct answers, meaning it shouldn't always be, that the answer falls on B or C. It should be a B, a C, a D, all of the above, doesn't matter. It needs to be random. Keep the number of options the same. Avoid tricking test takers. We're not here to trick the students. You are here to really see whether the students are able to comprehend what they've learned, or whether they've actually achieved the fact that they understand the concept. And then use all of the above and none of the above with caution. It doesn't mean that you cannot use it, but you need to be very careful how you would use it. Another approach that we use within teaching is called the natural approach. And you'll have to be able to define what the natural approach is, and here are some bullet points to explain it easily. You have the natural approach, developed by Tracy Terrell and was supported by Stephen Krashen. The teaching according to the natural approach focuses on communicative abilities. One of its objectives is to help beginners become intermediate, meaning that they won't stay beginners, that they will actually progress to the next level. Vocabulary is considered prior to syntactic structures. A lot of comprehensible input must be provided, meaning understandable work. Is it on the level that you expect the students should be able to understand? Use of visual aids to help comprehension. As you know, not all students learn the same way. You have visual learners, you have auditory learners, and you have kinesthetic learners. So visual aids would really help the visual learners, because they have to see something before they can really understand, especially with comprehension. You focus on listening and reading. Speaking emerges later. Reducing the high effective filter by focusing on meaningful communication rather than on form and providing interesting, comprehensible input. The technique used in this approach are often borrowed from other methods and adapted to meet the requirement of the approach. For example, the total physical response, which are command drills, the direct method activities of mime, gestures, and context are used to elicit questions and answers, and the communicative language teaching group, which is group work activities where learners share information to complete a task. So even though we talk about the natural approach, there are other approaches that are embedded within this approach. Then when we get to parts of speech, and one of the parts of speech are nouns, there are different types of nouns. You need to know them, you need to be able to identify them, you need to be able to give examples of the different types. Just to establish what nouns are, it's words that name persons, places, things, or ideas. Now, for the first type of noun, we have a proper noun. Proper nouns are the names of specific people, places, and things. They are spelled with capital letters. Your name is a proper noun. For example, London. London is a place, so it will be spelled with a capital letter. Usain Bolt, Florence Nightingale, Taj Mahal, you name it. There's many, many, many examples. Common nouns. A common noun, these nouns do not make specific persons, places, or things. It's just the thing. And remember, nouns, to determine, you could touch it, you can see it, you can taste it, you can smell it. Those are nouns. So cities, athletes, nurse, buildings, walls, tables, also so many examples. Abstract nouns are the little bit more difficult ones. These nouns names an idea, a quality, or a state of mind. For example, liberty, intelligence, happiness, sorrow. You know, when you get a text, use a highlighter to highlight the different types of nouns. You can use that as an example to practice, to identify different types of nouns. Take the text, take different color highlighters, know that now you are looking for proper nouns, you highlight it with one highlighter. Then you go through the text again and you say, okay, which ones are common nouns? If you do 2 or 3 of those activities, you will be quite waxed in the sense of knowing the types of nouns after completing it. The fourth type of noun is concrete nouns. These nouns name something that can be seen or touched: a shell, a car, a bridge. So don't get confused with concrete and common nouns. Common nouns are all things. Concrete nouns is something that you can touch or really see. So you can do the same activity regarding that. Then we have 3 major moods in English. What is mood? Mood is the form a verb takes to show how it is to be regarded. For example, as a fact, as a command, a wish, an uncertainty. How should the verb be explained? Now, the 3 types of mood that we have and that we use in English is the indicative mood. It's used to make factual statements or pose questions. For example, the sky is clear tonight. She stopped during the 3rd lap. The aliens will be unable to breathe our air. The imperative mood, it's to express a request or a command. Remember, that kind of links with the types of sentences. Imperative sentences, imperative mood, same thing. Drive the car, please drive the car. And then the subjunctive mood, showing a wish or a doubt. I suggest that Dawn drive the car. I propose that Dawn be asked to drive the car. So again, that shows you would like that to happen. Assessment. What are the principles of assessment? It is to improve learner performance. It is based on understanding of how learners learn. It's an integral component of course design. It requires clarity of purpose, goals, standards, and criteria. We should use a variety of measures. Methods should be valid, reliable, and consistent. Attention to outcomes and processes should be placed on, and more continuous assessment than summative assessment. I've really summarized the principles on this slide so that it's easier to understand, and then you can just elaborate if this is asked in an exam. Again, with assessment, we need to focus on continuous and summative assessment. You could be asked to differentiate or to determine the differences between continuous and summative assessment. For continuous assessment, it is planned and scheduled at the beginning of the year. It is kept as simple as possible. Class activities, homework, short tests, or completion of a topic can be recorded for continuous assessment. Assessment must be recorded systematically throughout the year. Inform learners and parents about progress and achievements, and to initiate compensatory teaching when needed. So you will see, as you teach and you do continuous assessment, you will see where your students are. You will see what they lack and what they are good at. And it's always better to give proper feedback to parents and the student to see that there will be growth. Summative assessment is at the end of a project, a unit, a program, or a school year. The progress and achievements of learners throughout the year is summed up, and these are usually done in tests and exam format. And as we've said already, continuous assessment should outweigh summative assessment. Language teaching methods. Cognitivism. Cognitivism emphasizes learners' cognitive activity, the reasoning and mental processing. That's what it is. It arose from the Chomskyan revolution. It gave rise in language method to cognitive code learning. It goes beyond behaviorist learning of facts and skills, adding cognitive apprenticeship. Working out rules deductively, it builds learners' experience and providing learning tasks that challenges. It functions as intellectual scaffolding to help learn and progress. It focuses on how material is understood, the aptitude and capacity to learn. Chomsky. Chomsky identified with the innatist or nativist theory, claims that learners are biologically programmed to acquire language. Learning language is an unconscious process. It's just going to happen. As we grow up, we learn certain skills without really being taught. It just happens. Child activates the learning acquisition device, the LAD, like a blueprint, providing the child with the capability to develop speech from a universal grammar. Krashen's input hypothesis. This slide will help you understand the hypothesis, and this is also summarized for you so that you can elaborate on it on your own if you get asked this in the exam. We acquire language in an amazingly simple way when we understand messages. We have tried everything else, learning grammar rules, memorizing vocabulary, using expensive machinery, forms of group therapy. What has escaped us all these years, however, is the one essential ingredient: comprehensible input. Stephen Krashen's linguistic theories had a more direct relationship to language learning and acquisition. Krashen, along with Terrell, developed the input theory, which stresses a maximum amount of passive language input that is just a little beyond the learner's current level of comprehension. Communicative language teaching, also known as CLT. It emphasizes interaction as both the means and the ultimate goal of learning a language. It was popular especially in Europe, and it was the constructivist views on language learning and education in general dominate academic discourse. The communicative language teaching is not so much a method on its own as it is an approach. In recent years, task-based language learning, TBLL, also known as task-based language teaching, TBLT, or task-based instruction, TBI, has grown steadily in popularity. TBLL is a further refinement of the CLT approach, emphasizing the successful completion of tasks as both the organizing feature and the basis for assessment of language instruction. Is the inductive method an effective tool? The inductive method is an extremely effective process for obtaining general, observation-based information about the world. In fact, the inductive method, whether guided in classrooms or occurring in non-academic settings, is one of the most common and natural forms of making logical assumptions about what we observe. Inductive reasoning allows us to gather ideas about an infinite number of events or phenomena in real life. Use of the inductive method as teaching tool to guide students through critical thinking, awareness, and evaluation. Using songs to teach grammar in class. Most enchanting and culturally rich resources that can easily be used in language classrooms. Songs offer a change from routine classroom activities. Precious resources develop students' abilities in listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Used to teach a variety of language items such as sentence pattern, vocabulary, pronunciation, rhythm, adjectives, and adverbs. Songs also give new insight into the target culture. Using contemporary popular songs, then the teacher meets the needs to the students. Of course, you need to be able to meet the students on their level so that they can learn best. And if you use their songs that they are into and really like, you will capture their attention immediately, and then they will learn the best way. Since songs are highly memorable and motivating, in many forms they may constitute a powerful subculture with their own rituals. Most songs, especially folk songs, follow a regularly repeated verse form with rhyme and have a series of other discourse features which make them easy to follow. Songs may both be used for the presentation or the practice phase of the grammar lesson, encourage extensive and intensive listening, and inspire creativity and use of imagination. Teachers should take the age, interest of the learners, and the language being used in the song into consideration, obviously. To enhance learner commitment, it is also beneficial to allow learners to take part in the selection of the songs. If you include students within your planning and with choosing what they like, they will be more open to learning. Okay, so that is the end for BS ENG31. If you have any questions or you need more clarity on any of the topics that we've been covering in these slides, you're more than welcome to SMS me at this number. I will get back to you as soon as possible, and I'll try and help and explain the best I can for you to understand. Thank you.